Hi students, I hope all of you had good health. So today we will be beginning with our next video lesson on nervous system. Last day I discussed with you about the functioning of our nervous system and the cell, which is the structural functional unit of our nervous system, that is the neuron, about its part and function of its different parts that are associated with it. Apart from this, I discussed with you about the different parts and components of our nervous system, that is the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the autonomous nervous system. Now in central nervous system, the two components were brain and the spinal cord. In case of brain, we started with reading about the different parts which are present in the brain, that is the forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. Now in case of forebrain, the different parts are cerebrum, thalamus, hypothalamus and the pituitary. In midbrain, the different parts, the different functions associated with midbrain will be discussed today. Next is the hindbrain, which consists of the different components like pons varoli, medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum. So I also mentioned last day that brain is protected within a bony covering which is known as the skull, and the protective membranes which are found in brain is the meninges. And apart from this, I discussed about the function of cerebrum, which is the largest portion of the brain, the function of thalamus, hypothalamus and pituitary. Today we will be beginning with the function of midbrain. Now midbrain, it is the part of brain which links the forebrain with the hindbrain, and it manages the function of both left brain and the right brain. Now, it is associated with vision, hearing, motor control, sleep and wake, arousal. All these phenomena are associated with the midbrain. It also helps in the fine tuning of muscles. That is, we already have learned that the voluntary activities are coordinated by the cerebrum. Now, this cerebrum, on receiving appropriate stimuli, communicates with the hindbrain cerebellum by means of this midbrain. Now, together with the strong communication between the cerebrum and cerebellum, which is mainly accomplished by this midbrain, a fine tuning of muscle occurs. And apart from this, what I said is it is concerned with vision, hearing, all these things, means whatever we hear, whatever we see, all these things are interpreted in this part of the brain. Okay. Next is, as I said, the different functions are mentioned again over here. It links the forebrain to the hindbrain. Next I said it helps in fine tuning of the muscles, and it is associated with vision, hearing, motor control, sleep and wake, arousal means when we will sleep, when we will get awake, we will be awake in the morning, or some of the people, even if they plan of to sleep late till morning, they will see that they can hardly do it, because it's a kind of practice or kind of biological clock which is working in our body, which helps to maintain a proper sleep and wake pattern in our body, and it is mainly done by the midbrain. Next is temperature regulation, that is whether our body temperature increases beyond the normal or whether it decreases beyond the normal, and in fact again maintaining the same back to its original form. All these things are done by the midbrain. And the upper part of the midbrain contains four rounded projections which control the visual reflex and auditory reflex, which I already discussed. Next is the hindbrain. Okay, now hindbrain consists of many parts which I shown you in the previous picture, that is cerebellum, pons varolii, medulla oblongata. Now we will be beginning with the cerebellum. Now it is known as the little brain. Okay, it is also known as the little brain, as the diagram over here also shows. This rounded portion is the cerebellum. Now it helps in coordinating the voluntary activities such as playing a sport. Okay, now voluntary activities can be maintaining body balance, can be maintaining posture. Like in the diagram is shown in the slide, it shows that how you will be throwing the ball towards the right side or the left side. All these movements are entirely coordinated by the cerebellum. Next is the cerebellum has many other functions enabling non-verbal learning and memory. Okay, like always we don't have to communicate by speaking only, but by through experience or through any kind of phenomena which is occurring around us. All these things will be regulated and coordinated by our cerebellum. So this is the function of cerebellum, and apart from this it does many more things, like as I said, it controls the center for posture and balance. It controls the skeletal muscle activities in our body. Also, it receives information from sensory systems, the spinal cord and the other parts of the brain, and regulates motor movement. Suppose you all are touching a hot cup with your right hand, instantly you withdraw your hand. Now, when you are touching a hot object, this information goes to the brain and the spinal cord, mainly the spinal cord, that is the central nervous system. Then what happens? It instructs the muscles of your arms and legs. If it is arm, then it is arm. If it is leg, then it is leg. But I am talking over here touching the hot object, so it's about the arms. Now instantly the cerebellum instructs your muscles to withdraw your hand. And this way your cerebellum actually regulates motor movements after getting the information from the cerebellum. Next is our pons varolii. Now, various nerves that emerge from here perform various functions which are as follows. Like, we have the trigeminal nerve. Now, trigeminal nerve actually consists of muscles that are responsible for biting, chewing and swallowing. Whatever you bite, whatever you chew, whatever you swallow, everything is coordinated by pons varolii. Another nerve which emerges from here is the abducens nerve. Now it allows the eyes to look from side to side. That means the rotation of your eyeball from the right to left and left to right, or to whatever you want to desire to see objects around you. It is entirely coordinated by the pons varolii via the abducens nerve. Next is the facial nerve. Okay, now facial nerve, it controls the facial expressions. Like whenever you are sad, you have one kind of facial expression. Whenever you are happy, you have another kind of facial expression. Like you will smile or you will not smile. and entirely this is controlled by the facial nerve. Next is the vestibulocochlear nerve. It allows the sound to move from ear to the brain. That means the pons varolii controls the movement of nerve impulse from ear to the brain. Means whatever you hear, whatever be the amplitude or frequency of the sound wave you are hearing, it moves to the brain by means of the vestibulocochlear nerve. And this way, it is also being coordinated by the pons varolii. Next, it stimulates and controls the intensity of breathing. Suppose when you are running, you are walking fast, or you are doing some strenuous activity, your breathing becomes very fast. Whereas when you sleep, your automatically the frequency and the intensity of breathing slows down. So it shows that how the breathing is being stimulated and controlled by the pons varolii. Means wherever it is required, accordingly the intensity of breathing will change. Next is it is associated with sleep cycles. Okay, sleep cycles means when you will awake and when you will sleep. Like most of the people at night after 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, though we try to remain awake for studying or any other things, but actually what happens, you automatically your eye closes and you start to drowse off. Okay, means you continuously just feel very drowsy. Sometimes for few minutes also you find your eyes are closed, even you have slept also. But after awaking you find, oh my, I am still sleeping, but I was about to read my topic which is there for my exam next day. So these are the things which happen. But why we are sleeping at that particular point? Why? Because the sleep cycles are being controlled and regulated by our midbrain and the pons varolii, which are situated. Next is the medulla oblongata. Now this portion, that is medulla oblongata, is a continuation of the pons varolii, as you can see in the diagram so given below, and the medulla oblongata continues down as the spinal cord. Now it carries out and regulate many life-sustaining activities like the breathing, the swallowing, the heartbeat. All these involuntary activities are entirely coordinated by the medulla oblongata. It is easily the most important part of the brain, and its functions are involuntary. And for this reason, most of the times whenever you are fighting, playing or joking, your elders say you never to hit any person at the back of the brain. Now the question is, why people warn you constantly about not to hit anyone at the back of the brain? And the very reason is, if you hit someone at the back of the brain, what happens? The person suddenly may die. Why they will suddenly die? First of all, the involuntary activities like breathing, heartbeat, it stops instantly. Whenever you have bit someone at the back of the brain and the medulla oblongata is injured, okay, instantly the heartbeat and the swallowing and the breathing processes are stopped, and instantly the person dies. And also, this medulla oblongata and pons varolii together forms the brain stem. That means it transferred the neural messages from the brain to the spinal cord and spinal cord back to the brain. Okay. Now there is a continuous coordination that goes on between the entire part of the body and between the brain and the spinal cord, so that we can work in a very smooth manner. So this way, all the involuntary activities in our body is entirely regulated by the medulla oblongata. And another question also comes, like a person who is why a person dies if medulla oblongata is injured, and the very reason is that as because it controls the breathing and the heart rate, instantly these things stop. So therefore medulla oblongata should not be injured by any way. Next, another component of our central nervous system, this is the spinal cord. Okay, now spinal cord, the diagram over here shows the spinal cord. Okay, this one. So what does this show? Actually, this is the vertebrae bone, and in the center is the portion through which the spinal cord passes, and it consists of two things. First is the gray matter, which consists of the axon, and the white matter, which consists of the cyton. I have already discussed this, but there is a big difference between the arrangement of this neuron in the brain and the spinal cord. In the brain, the gray matter containing the cyton is located outside, whereas the white matter containing axon is located in the center. As you can see, students, in the diagram which is being given over here, that arrangement and this arrangement is completely different. Now in the spinal cord, the gray matter containing axon is located in the center, whereas the white matter containing axon is located in the periphery. This two arrangement is entirely different in case of brain and spinal cord, and this portion always comes in the exam, that why or please you need to differentiate between brain and the spinal cord on the basis of the arrangement of neurons so present. Next is the spinal nerve. As you can see over here, students, two types of nerve are connected to the spinal cord. One is the afferent neuron or the sensory neuron, which I have discussed with you last day, that it carries the nerve impulses from the periphery, that is the sense organ, to the spinal cord. And again, spinal cord on interpretation sends the motor impulse through the efferent neuron, that is from central nervous system to the effector organ, glands or whatever muscles, for proper actions that need to be taken. So based on this, we can understand that brain and spinal cord is together known as the central nervous system. Now, why brain and spinal cord is together known as the central nervous system? Because both of them are receiving impulses from the outside environment or inside environment. Then after interpreting that, it is sending the nerve impulse or information or the direction to the respective organ and glands of our body so that they can work accordingly and our body can maintain a homeostasis. So this is being instructed. So here are the different functions of spinal cord which is being given, students. First of all, it receives afferent, it receives all kind of sensory impulses from the sensory receptor. And similarly, the fifth point you see, it conveys afferent information to higher centers and mediate their controlling influence over spinal mechanism. Okay, so these are the different functions. That means in one single sentence we can say that it receives information from the peripheral environment to the central nervous system, and accordingly it gives direction by means of motor impulses to the different organs and glands of our body. This is the main function of the spinal cord, and also it is the center for many reflexes, students. Many reflexes. We will be learning about reflexes also in our next slide. But before going to that, let me give you one example. Suppose a mosquito is biting on your right hand, what happens? Your left hand is instructed to hit the mosquito and kill it. That means this information that mosquito is biting is relayed to the spinal cord, and spinal cord instructs your left hand to hit on the right hand so that the mosquito dies. Now this entire neural pathway which is working below your neck is entirely coordinated by the spinal cord. Whereas suppose you are sitting in a room of your home and you hear something, you hear some sound which is coming from your room next to your door. What happens? Instantly your tongue moves and you just call your mother, ma'am, mother, what's wrong there? That means these reflexes are working above your neck. That means you are hearing some sound which goes to your brain, and your brain instructs your tongue to talk accordingly. That means these are different kind of pathways that is taken by the nerve impulse to move very effectively and very fast from the receptor to the effector, so that a fast transmission of nerve impulse can occur. So this is the function of the spinal cord. Now let me discuss about the reflex arc about which we were talking continuously. Like reflex arc, in this diagram, before moving into the definition, I would like to explain you the phenomena first. After that, I will be explaining you about what is reflex arc. First of all, students, see over here a diagram which shows that there is a lighted candle. Suppose what happens? You are touching this fire with your finger, okay, and automatically what happens? This sensation, that is you are touching a hot object, it goes to where? It goes to your brain or spinal cord. Since the reflex is, since this impulse is or the stimuli is coming from portion below your neck, so it will be controlled by the spinal cord. Now what happens? This stimuli goes to the spinal cord by means of the sensory neuron. This pink color, this nerve marks as the afferent neuron or the sensory neuron. Over here it shows it. This is the cell body of afferent neuron. This diagram is very important for your exam, upcoming exams also. So this is the cell body of afferent neuron. Then it moves on to the spinal cord, and there are appropriate interneurons present over here that sends the after interpretation, that sends the motor impulse to the respective neurons. Over here, over here, here is a blue color line which is shown over here. Now this blue color line shows the efferent neuron or the motor neuron. Now this efferent neuron carries the nerve impulse from this spinal cord to the respective muscles, so that the muscles can instantly withdraw your hand. Now this shortest route that is taken by the nerve impulse from the receptor to the central nervous system and back to the effector is known as the reflex arc. That is the shortest route taken by a nerve impulse from receptor to effector. This is the reflex arc. And the change in behavior, that is the automatic involuntary response, means instantly the withdrawal of hand is a change of behavior of the body. Now this automatic involuntary response of the effector to a stimulus is called the reflex action. So this is the function which is coordinated by our spinal cord below our neck. So I hope this much you understood. Next is, here is a schematic diagram again, which shows that how the nerve impulse is moving from the receptor to the effector. Now this portion is a is a schematic diagram which shows the movement of nerve impulse again from the receptor to the effector. First of all, the stimulus is the first point is stimulus is detected by the sensory cell. Now, when you were touching the hot object, that was again recepted by whom? By the receptors which are present in your skin. Then, as I said, after receiving the stimulus, what happens? Instantly, just remember the first day when I taught you this chapter, I said that instantly the stimulus is converted into nerve impulse, and after this stimulus is converted into nerve impulse, then transmission occurs. Now transmission, how can it occur? It occurs to neuron by means of the sensory neuron. Then it goes to where? You see, I'm marking this, I'm just showing this cursor on the right hand side with the help of my mouse, that by means of sensory neuron, again it goes to the spinal cord. Then after that, there is association neuron or the interneuron that relays the impulse from sensory neuron to the motor neuron. Now motor neuron passes the impulse to the effector, and from the effector it goes to the muscles so that muscles can contract and a response is evoked. So this is how the reflex arc works and brings about a reflex action instantly. Next is type of reflex action. Generally, there are two types of reflex action which occurs in our body. First one is the natural reflex action, and the second one is the conditioned reflex action. Now, natural reflex actions are those which are inborn, means it is not learned from previous experiences or some kind of previous learning. This is entirely inborn, innate, and it is totally based on our genetic constitution. Now here are some examples which are shown over here, like withdrawal. Okay, withdrawal means suppose you are just touching a hot object. Will you require some previous experience to feel that it burns your hand, and you will not remove your hand until and unless your hand or fingers are not burned? It's not like that. Whenever you touch a hot object, you feel the heat and instantly you move your hand. And this is an example of withdrawal reflex. Next is knee jerk, another example. Then gag reflex or pharyngeal reflex means where you need to swallow. Swallowing is not learned from the beginning. Whenever you put anything in the mouth of a newborn baby also, they instantly swallow it. Next is blink reflex. Whether we try or we do not try, we cannot stop blinking our eyes. And this is a kind of reflex which is learned from the beginning. Next is some more reflexes. The diagram are given over here, though details like this words which are been given over here, like patellar, pharyngeal, all these names are not required, but examples are definitely required. Like this, in the exam, what may happen, I may give you different types of example and you have to identify this reflexes. Okay, so these are the different types of reflexes which are there. Next is conditioned reflex. Now conditioned reflex. Next is conditioned reflex. Now conditioned reflexes are those that are learned through some previous experiences. Like after birth only, no people learn cycling, and it is a fact about learning from previous experience that how you will uh, learn to ride a cycle. Now this kind of reflex action which is learned through experience is known as conditioned reflex. Now here is a difference column which is being given for conditioned and unconditioned reflex. Unconditioned is nothing but that natural reflex only. So first of all, Unconditioned is inborn or inherited, and conditioned is acquired during lifetime. Unconditioned is a stable and constant when, whereas conditioned may be established or abolished. Unconditioned activity of low nerve centers, conditioned of cortical centers. Now, these are the different types of difference point which is being given, and it's important to know about the difference between conditioned or natural reflex and the conditioned reflex action. Next is the peripheral nervous system. Okay, now peripheral nervous system, it is mainly consisting of nerve cells or neurons that come emerges out of the brain and the spinal cord. Now the nerves which emerges from the cranial nerves are the that emerges out of the brain is known as the cranial nerves. There are 12 pair of cranial nerves which we find in our body. They are mainly of sensory, motor or mixed type of nerve. And rest of the nerves which emerge from the spinal cord is known as the spinal nerve, and they are 31 pair in number. Now altogether the word periphery means outside. Now these nerves generally receive information or helps in transmitting or transmission of nerve impulses from the receptor to the central nervous system, and after interpretation from the central nervous system it moves on to the effector organ or gland by means of this neurons only to the periphery or outside. So this is the main function of the peripheral nervous system, that is to establish communication between the peripheral environment and the central nervous system so that a homeostasis is maintained in the body. Next is our autonomous nervous system, that is parasympathetic and sympathetic. Don't go with the name like parasympathicus and sympathicus, the meaning, and the sympathetic and parasympathetic, both the meaning are same, dear students. Now sympathetic and parasympathetic, these are the part of autonomous nervous system. Now autonomous nervous system, it consists of ganglia and nerve fibers which innervate various organs and glands of the body. It controls the involuntary actions of the internal organs of the body, and there are two parts of autonomous nervous system, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic, and they are having opposite actions. Remember, sympathetic nervous system is stimulated by the adrenal hormone, which you have already learned, and it does nothing but helps in excitation of your body's internal organs, especially during emergency condition. You can correlate this part with the adrenal hormones emergency situation. The function is same. Whereas parasympathetic nerve simply reduces the activity of the organs and glands which are mainly activated by the sympathetic nervous system. Like during your emergency condition, what happens? Your heartbeat increases, your breathing increases, the conversion of glycogen to glucose in the liver increases for fast muscle contraction. Whereas salivation decreases, blood flow to the skin and digestive tract decreases. As a result, what happens, students? You all feel thirsty and you look pale whenever you are in a nervous and tensed condition. Okay. Now, if this situation persists for a long, it may have a very ill effect for your health. So what happens? Sympathetic nervous system, it works antagonistically with the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, means like if sympathetic nervous system increases the heartbeat, then parasympathetic nervous system decreases the heartbeat. If sympathetic nervous system dilates bronchioles in lungs, parasympathetic nervous system constricts the bronchioles. Sympathetic nervous system decreases peristaltic movement in the intestine, whereas parasympathetic increases. Next is sympathetic reduces secretion of the salivary gland, whereas parasympathetic increases secretion of the salivary gland. Sympathetic cause secretion of adrenaline, whereas parasympathetic no effect on the adrenaline gland. That means in general we can say that sympathetic nervous system are excitatory, whereas parasympathetic are inhibitory type. So this way, today we finish off with the chapter nervous system. I hope all of you have understood the chapter well. Go through the video lesson, and if you have any doubt, any queries, you may ask me in the next video session. Thank you, students. Have a nice day.